Hi, it's Mrs. Moss here. Okay, so we've talked about the Earth's shape. We've talked about the different parts that make up the Earth. Now it's time to talk about locations on the Earth and the way those locations are organized. The Earth is divided by lines of latitude and lines of longitude. This should sound familiar to you because you've been studying it for many years in school. We're going to go through it a little more thoroughly today. Latitude lines go across the Earth. They run east to west, but they separate north from south. If you want to remember lines of latitude, I always try to remember it this way, by crossing my T's. If I cross my T's for latitude, then I know that those are the lines that go across the Earth from east to west. So let's take some notes. Latitude is the line of reference for the latitude, or the starting point, is the equator, and the equator's degree is 0 degrees. So anything above the equator is considered north, and anything below the equator is considered south. So therefore, the equator divides the Earth into northern and southern hemispheres. This is a picture of the equator highlighted in red. Everything above the equator is considered north. Everything below the equator is considered south, as I said before. These group of people are standing on the equator, so therefore they're in two hemispheres at once. Kind of cool, huh? The maximum degree of latitude is 90 degrees north, or the North Pole, and 90 degrees south at the South Pole. Latitude lines run parallel around the Earth, which means, if you remember from your math skills, parallel lines never touch. So these lines of latitudes never touch. And if you see here in this picture, the lines of latitude just run across. They never touch. What is Polaris? This seems like a random question, perhaps. But Polaris is known as the North Star, and the reason we need to bring up Polaris is that it's directly related to our latitude. The North Star is located directly above the Earth's axis at 90 degrees north. And if you know your angle to your North Star, then you know your latitude. Therefore, your altitude Polaris equals your latitude. This, I cannot stress enough, is very important. I'm going to star it in my notes, and I would recommend you do the same. Your altitude of Polaris equals your latitude. The instrument that's used to find your angle to Polaris is called an astrolabe. It's what this gentleman down here is using to get the angle from his location on Earth at the horizon up until this beautiful Polaris star. This method of navigation can only be done in the northern hemisphere. Why? Because if you're in the southern hemisphere, you can't see the North Star. You won't be able to see it at all. So any location that's in the southern hemisphere has to use a different line of reference for navigation. Polaris is only found in the northern hemisphere. Here's another picture of the astrolabe. You can tell from the picture that it was an old instrument that was used, but still relevant today. This picture shows an observer at the horizon, and it shows the angle of Polaris from the horizon. This angle, 42 degrees, is your latitude. This piece of information right here tells you where this observer is standing. This person is standing at 42 degrees north. This information here, this 48 degrees, has no bearing on your latitude at all. It's extra information in the diagram that we don't really need to know. As long as we know our altitude of Polaris is between the horizon and Polaris, that's where we'll find our line of latitude. So if you know where Polaris is, you can figure out which way is north. Polaris is found in the constellation of the Little Dipper. It's right at the handle. So if you're able to tell in the night sky where the Little Dipper is, then you can find Polaris relatively easy. These are pictures of star trails. This picture has been taken through exposure set at a very high rate of exposure. The camera was set at the high rate of exposure. So it looks as if all of the stars in this picture are rotating around a single point. Well, this point that they're rotating around, right here in the center, is Polaris. This leads us to our lines of longitude, which we're going to save for another video clip. So please turn to the next video clip and we'll learn about lines of longitude.